At Drummond Golf, we understand your passion.
Nice roll.
And that's because every Drummond Golf store is owned and run by a local who loves the game as much as you do.
Yeah, it's come off the face really well.
Someone who knows where you play and what you need.
Oh yeah, looking good.
With Australia's biggest range and expert knowledge.
Great. Now let's try that putter with this grip.
So if you want to improve your game, see a local expert at Drummond Golf.
I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 54, the Players' Championship edition of Playing from the Tips, Golf Australia magazine's meandering tipping and preview podcast that covers all corners of the globe to give you the good oil on who's playing where and occasionally who might even win. Jimmy Emanuel here in the host chair and importantly back in the country after some time in South Africa at the BMW Golf Cup World Final. Looking ahead to obviously the players at TPC Sawgrass, but also the conclusion of the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia season and Asian Tour restarting. Joining me to do so is just one of our so-called experts this week, perhaps after Adrian Logue's return to tipping form making him irreplaceable, or because everyone else was busy. But the one who's still with us is Mr. Consistent, both in appearances and tipping. I speak, of course, of Rod Morrie. Rod, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, mate. And I suppose what Logue's just setting his schedule is he doesn't like to play 2 weeks in a row, especially if he's had a win. He likes to take the next week off. Is that what we're seeing getting established here?
He kept telling us that he was Mr. Elevated Events, but he's dipped out of the players, which I'd argue the PGA Tour thinks is more elevated than any elevated event, as if you can say something like that. Coward, yeah. Exactly.
Coward.
Exactly.
Yeah. Won't back it up in the big events. Yeah.
No,
big
exactly.
game week to week. Yeah.
Exactly.
Flat track bully. That's what we'll call it.
Flat track bully. Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. It was an interesting...
How does he do it? How does he do it?
How does he do it? Because we will get to exactly what he did, but he has done it again remarkably. Yeah. It was an interesting week in golf. There was cheating allegations, dummy spits, an under-par Anthony Kim round. Cam Smith returned to form. What caught your eye last week, Rod? Was there anything that stood out?
Matteo Manacero, I think. If you were a golf fan when he emerged, the excitement was off the charts. It was, this kid is going to, and he won, 4 times as a teenager on the European Tour? In fact, I recall him winning the BMW PGA Championship, not being able to take the prize because he wasn't old enough to drive. He didn't have a license, or I think the rules at the time, he couldn't drive the car that had the amount of power that they were going to give him. So he was a freak and literally completely disappeared. I mean, you're a bit like Anthony Kim. You'd always see little updates. Oh, he's playing on the Alps Tour. He went to the Alps Tour, Jimmy. And then he just won again on the European Tour at the weekend. Fabulous story. And one of the games really good, guys. Impressive.
Of course, emerged at the Tom Watson Open, where he was low amateur.
That's right. Did he? No, it wasn't Matteo. Did Matteo play in the Australian Open a year or two before that with Tom Watson? I seem to have a vague recollection. But look, I thought that was the story of the week. And having done the LPGA preview before, the LPGA was just one fabulous storyline after another on Sunday afternoon. It kind of wouldn't have mattered who'd won. It was exactly what a golf tournament should be. Just
exactly. All
those fabulous storylines converging as it got closer and closer to the end. And, of course, Bailey Tardy, who we remember from, well, she did the Alison Corpus, didn't she? What Alison Corpus did to her at the US Open at Pebble Beach, she did to the field at the Blue Bay. So they really stood out for me. But I think Matteo, just a fabulous – if you're a golf fan, that's a fabulous golf story. So
yeah. And again, as we are loath to say well done to people who've been on this show or our friends, but well done to you and Porter, who was part of that coverage in the LPGA. I thought that whole Asian swing coverage was a real highlight for tournament golf stuff recently. So
yeah, couldn't agree more. And nice to hear a bunch of different voices and accents too. We get so used to
Kate
American.
Burton as well, Ali Whitaker. It's so good. They do such a good job with those. So on last week, our collective tipping efforts were actually some of the best of the year. 7 top 10s. And Logue, once again, back in the winning seat with Abe Answer in Hong Kong. Those results taking us to 6 wins and 41 top 10s in 2024 collectively, which we once again say unrivaled in golf magazine preview podcasts in Australia.
In Australia, broadcast out of Sydney.
Broadcast out of Sydney. Correct.
That's right.
Correct. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually Abe Answer in Hong Kong was a pretty exciting little finish there as well. I'm not sure if you caught much of that, but playoff with Cam Smith and Paul Casey, Joaquin Neiman missing by 1. The best players have kind of started to stand up a bit more consistently in live golf. So
it's gaining credibility, isn't it?
It is,
absolutely. But they seem to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. The Anthony Kim thing felt like a step back after establishing credibility as a proper golfer. But I suppose it depends what market they're trying to attract. If it's the existing golf demographic of 40 years standing people like me, they're probably up against it. But if they're looking for some sort of new markets, maybe that's the way to go. But yeah, it's after 2 years, it seems to finally start. It's starting to look like a proper golf tour / tournaments week in and week out, I think. So,
although you will have noted, obviously, as a diehard follower of the teams, that the Crushers, Bryson DeChambeau's team, don't have much planning because they all showed up to wear different outfits on the Sunday when they won, and they all got up in their different non-matching outfits, which is not
these little things are what Liv get wrong, aren't they?
That's
and
the thing.
Badly wrong, embarrassingly wrong. It's like cartoonishly wrong. It's like, can you not? You get all this other stuff, and then the team names are ridiculous, and they don't match, and it's just, I don't know. I can't fathom it. It's weird.
Seems the simple stuff. Anyway, let's get into this week. And firstly, it's actually the 50th staging of the Players' Championship, which is, of course, the PGA Tour's flagship event with long-held claims to be the men's game's 5th major. Yet now, its strongest field in golf claims are being regularly questioned. Rod, the Players is perhaps one of the more interesting studies in the current landscape of men's golf. It was this event that was so close to a major in terms of field quality. It was played at the same place. Everyone knew the golf course. Everyone was excited to watch it every year. And now it's in this awkward situation of it doesn't have all the best players because the live players are not allowed in. Jay Monahan fronted the media this morning, our time, and had to answer all the questions about where the deal's at, what he's doing. It's going to be, we were talking just before, kind of a State of the Union that's address you don't want to give each year if there's no deal being done. Where do you think it sits currently?
It's a tough one, isn't it? It's look, I was always on board with the idea that it shouldn't be called a major, but it should be constantly referred to as potentially the 5th major. It's right between being one of the most important events in the game and just one of the best events in the game. And look, it has been a fabulous time. The list of winners is magnificent. The course always – we'll talk about this later, but the course suits nobody. The records of the players who've won – nobody has ever defended their title at Sawgrass. No. Not one player since 1982. And you think about the quality of players that you're talking about. It's almost – for the players, it's almost going to be death by 1,000 cuts if the current state remains the same. You can't claim to be a 5th major without Rahm, Johnson, Smith. We know the names, particularly, that are missing from it. That's an easy fix for the tour. They just have to lift the bans at some point and they can invite those players. You can understand why they haven't done that yet. Yeah, I don't know. Like everything in men's professional golf, Jimmy, this just takes a little bit more luster off what was a shining sort of product, really, up until a couple of years ago. So, yeah, look, no focus really on the golf as yet. That's not uncommon, I suppose, at this stage of the week, but it just seems amped up this week because, as you said, Monahan's being grilled. I saw there were some pretty direct questions put to him about his position and whether he had the support of players and the board. It's that weird time in golf. We're just going to have to live through it and see what comes out the other side. Nobody knows, by the way. I don't know what a deal would look like. They keep asking about this deal. What is the deal? What's the proposal? Yeah. How does LIV and PGA Tour coexist? I mean, under the current system, there's no way you could have LIV players play 14 events on LIV, the 4 majors, and then what? Cherry pick 1 or 2 PGA Tour events? That's just demeaning to have it that way. So I don't know what it might look like if they do come to a deal. But yeah, look, it's probably suffered more than most tournaments because it rightly gets, I mean, it'll overshadow everything this week, as it should, the players. It's a big and really important tournament, and the players are invested in it, which isn't always the case with week-to-week events. So for all of that, Jimmy, if you went back and listened to all that, I have no idea. I've said nothing there because I have no idea. But no question, like all of men's professional golf, it's taking a hit because of all this other stuff.
I think one of its issues as well, unlike the majors where they can separate themselves from things because they're not owned by either entity, so they can look more historically at their past and celebrate it. You're in the 50th anniversary and you won't be able to showcase certain winners. I mean, Greg Norman was a dominant force at the Players at one stage. Mm. He had some of the more impressive wins. Cam Smith's win a couple of years ago was absolutely magnificent. Dustin Johnson won there. It's you can't have a retrospective on it without leaving things out and then, basically talking about the elephant in the room. So it's a strange week and a strange sort of situation I think the event finds itself in for a while yet, at least.
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about the golf, though. We mentioned no one else is, but why don't we? So you've looked at the field. Why don't you give us a bit of a rundown on the field, who stands out and all that sort of stuff?
Jimmy, take a dart, put the field list on the wall, close your eyes and throw it. That's what the Players delivers, and that's part of the intrigue of the tournament. Common sense says to you that defending champion Scotty Scheffler, after the way he played last week, is unbeatable. In fact, everyone else might as well go home, just give him the trophy for the next couple of weeks. As I said, nobody's ever defended their title. Nobody's ever won back-to-back. He's probably the best chance we've seen for a while, but that was an interesting storyline from last week. I wonder if Rory's wishing he'd kept his mouth shut about the mallet putter.
Yes.
Or the broadcast I'm sure the rest of the field are wishing Rory had kept his mouth shut about trying a mallet putter. Just on that, we've all played the game, Jimmy. Isn't that bizarre that a guy can go from cannot hit the hole from 10 feet, where he hits it all day, to cannot miss the hole from 10 feet in a day?
There's a couple of things about tour players, particularly when it comes to putters. Number one, they're all sheep. So a guy plays well with a certain style of putter and they all go and ask that equipment rep the next week and say, can I get one? As if it's some sort of magical bean. The other thing is that just a change in look can change these guys. I remember Jeff Ogilvy saying years ago he had multiple versions of almost the exact same putter, whether they were a different finish, they had a slightly variation to the sight line, to the dot, to whatever, that just occasionally, just to refresh your eyes and to refresh how you feel over the ball, you make a change. That's, I think, part of it with Scotty Scheffler. I think part of it is the mallet that he's using is making it easier for him, and he's just found a way to roll the ball over his spot a bit better, and he's away.
Yeah. Putters are funny, aren't they? They're a bit like slippers, I reckon. You put them behind the door for a year, pull them back out, and they just
absolutely
fit beautifully into their hands. Like, I'd forgotten how comfortable these were. And you putt great for 2 weeks before it has to go back behind the door and join the rest of the putters. And either a new one comes along or another one gets dug out. So, look, that was interesting. So, in terms of players, like I said, you really could pick any. But obviously, the big names will be the ones that we'll be looking out for in the lead-up this week. Scheffler leads the list. Shane Lowry's been playing particularly well. Will Zalatoris, well and truly over his back surgery, it would seem, playing fantastically. Justin Thomas, former winner here, coming back into it. Jason Day, slowly but surely building again. Adam Scott, played here 21 times, made 17 cuts. That's a pretty good record, actually. I can't find – there are almost no players who've never missed the cut at Sawgrass.
There's certain places that Adam has those kind of records that are just so impressive and so such a tribute to his longevity and ability at tough golf courses too.
Yeah, indeed. For all of that, though, he's only had 4 top 10s. And that's kind of the story of Sawgrass. If you have a look at players' records at Augusta, you'll just see the top 10s piling up one after the other after the other. It's a real horses for courses course. And this is the complete opposite. We'll talk about the course shortly because I know you've been looking at it. I'm not sure why it's that way, but Fred Funk has won there, as has Tiger Woods. You can't find more polar opposites on the golf spectrum than those two. Look, everybody knows that. We all know that about Sawgrass. Who this week? Well, to me, if you're looking for a tip, you kind of got to look outside the biggest names because of all places is where it's a potential to kind of happen. Min Woo made his debut here last year and was sensational. I think he played in the last group Sunday, didn't he?
He did.
Finished sixth in the end, and I remember him, he really stood up. It was kind of like, okay, he's now arrived on the big scene. He's, of course, back this year. For a tip, I'm going to go outside the biggest names. I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell. Do you know why I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell?
Because he had one of the great little episodes here last year when a horn went off in the background.
Partly that, but partly because Logue tipped him a while ago, and if it's good enough for Logue, like tour pros with putters, Jimmy, we're sheep, us tipsters.
Yes.
And if it was good enough for Logue a week or two ago, I'll have a crack. And he's actually got a very good record here. But there'll be some interesting players to watch regardless of whether they're in, and I think Ludwig Aubert is one of them. He'll make his debut this week, and we'll find out this week whether Sawgrass is going to be the sort of place where he plays well or not. Although, as I've just said, if he misses the cut this year, doesn't mean he can't win next year.
Yep.
It's just that sort of golf course. So, look, one thing about Sawgrass is it always throws up compelling finishes. Those last 3 holes lend themselves to that. The field lends itself to that. You've always got that mix of the very best and high-profile players, and there's always a few up-and-comers coming through. So, look, it's always a great event, and it will be again this year. I don't know who's going to win, but I'm going to say Keith Mitchell will.
I'm going to say, we'll go through our tips and we'll have a look at the golf course, but I'm going to say Shane Lowry, who's played decently here before. He's kind of played well last week as well at a golf course that he's never played well at. And someone said, how come you're playing well this year? He says, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I can't work it out. So
he's got a look, doesn't he, at the moment? He's got a look.
He does. He does. Yeah. So I think Shane Lowry, and I think what we should do is, given he's not here and we can potentially ruin his tipping credo, or we can also make the team efforts look better. We'll tip on behalf of Logue.
Dangerous. Yeah,
so I'll offer Logue's tip here, and this is the exact sort of event where he makes his money and sounds like a genius the week after by just tipping the favourite. So Logue would say Scotty Scheffler, and he'd say strokes gained something. So Logue's obviously tipping him here this week.
He'd have looked at 2 things on his way in the door to sit down in front of the microphone, and they're the 2 things he'd mention, and they would stand out. Just on a side note about that with Logue and the players, if you haven't, go to his blog, adrianlogue.com, and look up the absolute evisceration he did of the Players' Championship logo a couple of years ago. It's still one of the greatest pieces of writing.
Some of his best work
stuff.
ever.
Yeah, wonderful stuff.
On the course front, it's largely unchanged, really. A few years ago, there was a few more changes, but we haven't seen much for the TPC Sawgrass Stadium course layout. The course is a little soft, apparently, at the moment. There's some rain in the lead-up, but it should dry out in the early part of the week, but then there's a potential for a bit of thunderstorm maybe Friday, Saturday. So we'll see. Last year, of course, was absolutely hammered by thunderstorms there. So we'll see how that does. Island Green 17, of course, gets the most attention, or as John Huggan will tell you, it's not an island because it's actually connected to the rest of the golf course. But there's actually a fair bit more interest there. So that finishing run, the par 5 16th, where players can reach it in 2, can make a score before they hold a wedge or a 9-iron, and every part of their body tightens beyond understanding at 17. And then you play 18 with water all down the left side. And, potentially a championship on the line is quite the thrilling finish. But you've got things like the now drivable 12th, par 4 12th. That's an interesting question. There's a lot of, I think one of the reasons people don't necessarily always play well there is there's no set strategy. Each year it seems to play different. So whereas Sergio Garcia won his year by hitting fairway woods at every tee, the next year you show up and suddenly it's driver everywhere. The wind, the way the course is set up. Interestingly, since it's gone back to March a few years ago, the scores are a bit more varied. You get a bit higher winning scores. There's, with exactly the reasons for that, grasses and everything like that in Florida, and also just the weather is more unpredictable. So it's a golf course that Pete and Alice Dye designed for this exact purpose. It's not something you'd love to play every day, but it's something that's fascinating to watch top players in the world play.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And look, the weather does play. You might remember a couple of years ago, the wind howled through there on one of those. Having trouble. And I remember Justin Thomas really stood up. I remember watching Justin Thomas that week, and for the first time seeing just a guy really managing his trajectory and spin and really hitting some fabulous shots. And look, it's what a golf course should be. You mentioned John Huggan. He often says about, people talk about Oakmont and whatever, and the year that the US Open, the 2007 US Open, when Tiger shot, I think 71 on the Saturday, it was 1 under, and said he couldn't play any better. And as Huggy says, well, there's something wrong with the golf course. If one of the greatest players in the history of the game can't do any better than 1 under, that's not a great thing. You don't see that here at Sawgrass. There's been plenty of 63 shot here. I think Day shot 63 here.
Yeah, he did.
When he won it a couple of years ago, Norman shot 64, I think, in 94 in his opening round, and then 367s. And so the golf course is gettable if you play well, but it's just razor thin. You've got to be one of the very best in the world, playing at your best. Otherwise, 70 is a good score, and that's perhaps what separates. You've really got to be on for all 4 days. So, yeah, interesting course.
And before we leave it, there's no sponsor watch, obviously, because it's just called The Players. The most interesting thing about this in that name is that everything's in capitals, like PGA Tour is. Anyway, Yep.
Go and read Logue's.
Yeah, again, Logue's blog for that. Anyway.
Yeah.
You know the feeling when your mate's golf ball flies past yours? Or when you're on the green in regulation, but he holes it from the bunker? At Drummond Golf, we get it. That's why we have our lowest price guarantee. As Australia's biggest, you can count on our massive buying power for the lowest prices in golf. But if you do happen to find a lower advertised price, we'll beat it. The Drummond Golf lowest price guarantee. Unbeatable. Conditions apply.
Let's move along. And as mentioned in the opening, the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia season for 2023-2024 comes to a close this week. Kazuma Kobori already wrapping up the Order of Merit crown, which gets him a DP World Tour card and Open Championship start before the first tee shot is even hit at the national tournament presented by BMW. But there's 6 other players who are in the hunt for the other 2 DP World Tour cards this week, being Brett Coletta, Daniel Gale, Matt Griffin, David Micheluzzi, Jack Carter, and Ben Eccles, all needing different variations of permutations and results to take place for them to succeed. So that's going to be the sort of main excitement for the week, but there's also a tournament to win, and there's also the National Golf Club's Moona course, designed by Greg Norman and Bob Harrison, that hosts again, which is really good. Just really Australian golf. Sort of sandy dune land, strategy, wide variety of shots throughout the bag. It's number 12 in the country, according to Golf Australia magazine. It's kind of rugged beauty, swales, hollows, all that sort of stuff. Windmill in the middle of the fairway. It's got kind of a bit of everything.
It's kind of my kind of golf course. It fits. It's the polar opposite of Sawgrass. It fits in its landscape.
Yeah.
You look at Sawgrass and here is a golf course that has clearly been forced onto a site there and created every part of it. Whereas the National is just the complete opposite. It just, like you see with a lot, if you've ever played links golf in Ireland, probably more so, particularly you've got that big duney sort of country, that's kind of what the Mornington Peninsula, the National, I love that kind of golf. And I think it produces better golf. It was a fabulous tournament here last year with Tom Powell-Horan winning, and a bit like Kazuma Kobori swept all before him. That'll be really interesting, though. I know I've been doing it for a couple of years. I spent a lot of years kicking the PGA of Australia and the PGA Tour of Australasia, but they deserve lots and lots and lots of accolades for what they've done the last couple of years. COVID really sprung them into creative thinking, and this tournament is another example of that, I think, where they're playing good players on really good golf courses that lots of golf fans will be familiar with and will enjoy watching. They've done it again, and they've created this interest of, this is the last event of the season, 3 players are going to go to the European Tour. We know one of them, and the other 2 are still up in the air. That's exactly what you want. This is what the FedEx Cup is supposed to be, but it's just a money grab for everybody involved. So kudos again to those in charge of the tour. They've done a really, really good job of making and slowly building professional golf in Australia back to something that you can watch every week and enjoy. It doesn't have to be Adam Scott to be enjoyable to watch. I've loved getting to know some of the characters this year and last couple of years through the WebEx series and these events. So full marks to them, and I will definitely be watching some, and just a joy to watch golf on a Sunday afternoon, Jim.
Yep. Absolutely. It'll be a particular joy because I'll be a part of the commentary team, so you'll really enjoy yourself. But
clearly we'll watch it with the sound down, but
yeah, of course.
I jest, of course. You fit nicely into that role, I must say.
Outside of those DP World chasing players, there's tour winners, there's 96 players. It's a real sort of quality field. Some who'll kind of go into professional golf hibernation following this because they don't have many places to play, while others will go and chase starts. And then there's the guys getting ready to go overseas who have their bigger tour cards. You've got Micheluzzi, Anthony Quayle, Dimi Papadakis amongst those. So it's a real nice mix. It's just shaping to be a really good tournament. So who do you like to take out the title?
Well, that tournament within a tournament that you mentioned for the Order of Merit, I really think, and he's kind of been a rejuvenated player this year, Matt Griffin just keeps showing in the last sort of couple of months. He won the Heritage, I think, back in January.
Sure did.
Finished third at the New Zealand Open, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So he's right there and thereabouts. Home country, he'll be very familiar with the golf course, and he would want nothing more than one of those DP World Tour cards. At this stage of his career, that would be fantastic. He spent a lot of years in Japan. That's over now. He'd love to have somewhere internationally to play, I'm sure, and he'll just have that. They'll all have the motivation, but he's got the game at the moment and the motivation, so I'm going to go with Matt Griffin, and he's one of the world's nicest blokes.
He, I believe, said earlier this week in a radio interview, he was looking at this event as potentially a couple of months ago, the last event as a full-time tournament player. Really? He was not well placed on the order of merit. He didn't have a card overseas. He was thinking, this might be it. And he's now looking at it as a chance to get a DP World Tour card. Amazing sort of swings and roundabouts. So good on Griffo, who's, as you said, one of the nicest blokes out there. I'm going to go with Anthony Quayle. Showed up at the New Zealand Open, having had a couple of months off, played really well, was right in the mix there. He's getting ready to go and play overseas. Just class player, but a player who, not unlike you mentioned Justin Thomas, when conditions are a little bit tougher, has a lot of different shots that other guys don't necessarily have. So I like him here. And then who do we think Logan would tip here?
Oh, good question. So somebody left field. He likes the left field. Just on Anthony Quayle, by the way, he was one of those players I think really hurt by COVID. He was right at that pivotal point of his career when COVID hit, and Matt Griffin was towards the other end of his career, but Anthony Quayle, that's really cost him a couple of years, I think, because he was a player on the rise. Who would Logue pick?
I tell you who Logue would pick. Ben Wharton, who had a good week at the New Zealand Open before it looked like he was going to lose his card. And I believe he might be a member at the National, and it's just the kind of thing Logue would have seen somewhere once and been like, that's him. Yeah. Well picked,
Ben
Logue.
Wharton it is. Well done, Ben. Nice win, mate. Well done.
Finally, Liv takes a week off, so the Asian Tour comes back, and a fair few of the Liv players actually make an appearance here. So, International Series Macau, tell us all about it.
Fair few. There's loads of Liv players in this field. Yes, the Macau Open, sponsored by Wynn, apparently the world's leading luxury integrated resort developer and operator. What does that mean?
Yeah,
what's that mean? It's like a mission statement, isn't it? There's a collection
integration.
They're all words. All of those are words. I recognise them, but in that order, they make no sense to me. But clearly, it's a lucrative business whatever they're in because they can afford to sponsor golf tournaments.
Well, casinos, basically.
Yeah, casinos, that's right. Integrated luxury resort, exactly, is code for casino. Min Woo won last year at 30 under. You remember this?
Yes. 30
under par for 4 days. It's extraordinary. Extraordinary scoring. He, of course, won't be defending this week because he's the players. It's a newish tournament, been played since 1998. The golf course was opened in 1993. Minwoo's 30 under was 10 better than the previous scoring record at the time. It was 20 under before that.
Decent week.
Yeah, decent week indeed. Lots of Liv players, as you said, looking to grab world ranking points. Among them our own Lucas Herbert, Patrick Reed, Pat Perez, Andy Ogletree, Anthony Kim, which is interesting. Do you reckon he's looking for tournament reps or world ranking points? It's an interesting decision for him to tee it up here, isn't it?
I think it might maybe have something to do with his contract that he has to make a few Asian Tour starts.
As well, right. Yeah. And looking, it's handy. Macau, Hong Kong, you basically drive from one to the other in
Given he lives in Las Vegas, it's not a big change to go to Macau, to be honest. So
that's why he's going to Macau.
I think to use a bit of integration, synergy, and all that other stuff you said before, I think there's a bit of that. So, but I would guess maybe he wants a few tournament reps, but I'd say there's also part of his money that's effectively drawn out appearance fee is that you show up at a few Asian Tour events, you give him a little bit of a buzz as well. So.
Yeah, and look, you got some decent name players, as I mentioned in there, who are teeing up here. It's been fabulous for the Asian Tour, this whole Liv Golf investment. These international series events have been fabulous. They've been really good tournaments. And again, great tournaments for those who aren't Liv players to get a look up close at what they need to do to get
the Trav Smyths and all that of the
absolutely.
world.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So there's no question about that. The course itself looks pretty typical of the climate, what you get in Asia. It was opened in 93, as I said, so it's really a course of its time in appearance. It doesn't look like the National, Jimmy, if I can put it that way. Much greener, whiter sort of sand. It'll be a plenty good enough venue for a bunch of professional golfers to put on a show, but the field will be the main interest this week. Plenty of Australian players also this week. I can't possibly list them all because there's too many, but Scott Hend is a 2-time winner here. He's in the field and he's been playing okay. Wade Ormsby, Maverick Ancliffe, Trav Smythe, Justin Warren. I think most of those guys who got their cards on the Asian Tour towards the back end of last year are playing, so they'll all be pretty pleased with that. And it wouldn't be a surprise if there was to be an Australian winner, but I'm not going to pick an Australian to win, Jimmy. I'm going to pick Andy Ogletree because
King of the International Series.
Kind of, yeah. And it's been a terrific story too. You know, played that first Liv event, immediately had the PGA Tour taken off the radar, couldn't then go and qualify for the PGA Tour. Really went to Asia and rebuilt his game. You really got to admire a guy who does that. He could have played the mini tours in the US and all that sort of stuff. But so I'm going to go with Andy Ogletree, king of these events, as you said. And I saw a story about him earlier this week. Apparently he loves Macau. He went and visited there Didn't play the tournament, I don't think, last time, but he went and visited there at some point. Said he loved the place, so a happy Andy Ogletree will be a winning Andy Ogletree.
Nice. I'm going to go with one of the Australians. I'm going to go with Lucas Herbert, who's shown some form, but Lucas Herbert, who also will feel missing the players more than any other player in that field. That's the sort of event he loved when he got his PGA Tour card. That was just Lucas all over. So I think he's going to want to show up in the week off, and he's going to be there. So, and finally, who did we think Logue's going to do?
Good question. Let's give him Pat Perez or Pat.
Yeah. Or Patrick Reed. Let's give him
Patrick Reed.
And so that Mark Hayes comes for him when he doesn't actually know that he didn't do it. Yeah.
Although in his defence, once again, while you're at Logue's blog reading his carve-up of the Players' Championship blog, I have a read of the piece he wrote about Patrick Reed as well a couple of years ago, which was also excellently done. But yeah, you can have Patrick Reed, Logue. You deserve it.
Yeah, perfect. All right, that'll do it for episode 54 of Playing from the Tips. Rod, thank you for all your efforts. And for some reason, that was an episode that seemed to go very smoothly and without boastfulness. I don't know why.
Well, hard to say. Hard to put you. We'll have to go back and have a debrief. Just what was different this week?
Yeah, post game.
If there's anything obvious,
what we can pick. You can of course follow along with all these tournaments on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au, and combine that with the Players Championship channel on Fox Sports. One of those weeks where you just get constant golf. It's just good to just have it on there and have it on in the background. I will while I'll be working this week and just have golf going. It's very enjoyable. And while you're taking in the players, you can actually start your Masters preparation. The April issue of Golf Australia magazine goes on sale Thursday. Certain Tiger Woods on the cover. Inside, 18 Masters winners talk about how to win at Augusta, which will be a very interesting little story. You've got an Aussie feature about all the Australians teeing it up there, led by Cam Smith, before they take the trip down Magnolia Lane. So get out and get the April issue of Golf Australia magazine. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week on Playing from the Tips.